All right, the Georgia Bulldogs get spanked by Ole Miss 28-10 yesterday in Oxford. What the heck is wrong with the Georgia Bulldogs? We're going to look at both sides of this game. We're looking at it from the Georgia perspective. We'll look at it from the Ole Miss perspective. So, heading into this game, my keys were rainy day. Who's going to win the lines of scrimmage? You got a really good defense line for Georgia. You got a really good line for Ole Miss. That is where they put their money this offseason. Could they be physical? Ole Miss has not been able to be dominant in the trenches. They've been really good throwing the football. They've always had good quarterback play. They've had good receivers. It's Lane Kiffin. You put them in 7-on-7, they're going to look pretty damn good. But they've had trouble stopping the run. They've had troubles running themselves. They've had troubles protecting the quarterback. Heading into this game, go back. Both D lines, really good. Georgia's offensive line, especially with Tate back at guard, thought was going to be really good. Ole Miss's offensive line has been the big question. They themselves, just like the defensive line, spent a lot of money bolstering that offensive line this offseason, and it just really has not gelled. Just really, you could get a bunch of guys that are better, but until they work together as a unit, that offensive line is never going to be as good as they possibly could be. Good example, I had South Carolina yesterday. South Carolina has now had 9 straight games with the same starting offensive line. A year ago, they had 9 different offensive lines through the first 9 games of the season. Right now, they're playing really well as a unit. Individually, they're not great or not superstars, but as a unit, they play together. And I think that's been the missing link for Ole Miss is those guys playing together as a unit. So back to keys to the game heading into it. Good defensive lines. Georgia, good offensive line with Tate back, especially with Tate back. Ole Miss question mark. Rainy day, advantage Georgia. Georgia's just going to out physical Ole Miss. They're going to win and dominate the lines of scrimmage. That was my thought heading into the football game, and I was wrong. Big time wrong. Ole Miss won the lines of scrimmage. But regardless of Lane Kiffin and his style of attack and his offense, once again, he knows this. Ole Miss fans know this. Georgia fans know this because this is how they won the 2 national championships. You have to win at the lines of scrimmage. Michigan a year ago won at the line of scrimmage. This is still football. And if you're not the most physical team on the field, you're going to lose more times than not. Georgia was not the more physical team at the line of scrimmage. They lost the football game. So let's go down. Let's go group by group in this football game. We'll start with Georgia's offense first. What went wrong? Carson, 20-31, 186, no touchdowns, 1 pick. The running game was non-existent. Obviously, Trevor Etienne was not fully healthy, only 6 carries, only really played the beginning of the football game. 33 carries, 59 yards, 1.6 yards per carry. And this is the other, this is where I really want to go the narrative too. Passing yards per pass, 6 yards per pass for Georgia. This is an offense right now that is still stuck in the mud when it comes to creating explosive plays. There's no explosive plays going on right now. And listen, the offensive line at times protected, I thought, well, and Carson had time to get through his reads. 5 sacks on the day. Most of those came late in the game when Ole Miss is up. And I think Carson said this after the game too. Listen, when you're going against a great defensive line and you're down double digits and those guys can just tee off, like Princely is an absolute beast off the edge. All those guys up front can get after the quarterback for Ole Miss. That was major advantage to them. So, but I thought offensive line early on wasn't horrendous in the pass game. Carson had time to get through his reads. There's no plays to be made down the field, to be honest. And I've said it all year. I think the receivers are just average to good. There's no separation. There's no one creating any sort of space. It is catch, tackle. It is catch a screen, get 5 yards, get tackled. It's catch a dig route, get tackled. I thought Lawson Lucky looked good. I think Lawson has a lot of juice to him. And then right now, the guy that's getting completions down the field is Cash Jones, the running back. Finding matchups with him, getting him on wheel routes, flexing him out as a receiver. Like, that's how Georgia's been able to try to create explosive plays for the past couple weeks. It's not Arian Smith. It's not Dom. It's not Dylan Bell. Right now, there is a lack of separation coming from the receivers. And I know it's frustrating for Carson. It has to be frustrating for Bobo because he's getting these guys one on one and they're not getting open. It's catch, tackle, catch, tackle. There's only so much you can do. And then the run game, Georgia got whipped up front. Thought they looked good the first drive. I mean, you get the turnover, you get the pick. They just commit to the run. They're physical. They're doing their thing. And then all of a sudden, there was one play. I'm sure everyone saw this. I didn't watch it live. I watched some of it live, but then I rewatched the coach's tape. There's one play where they're backed up in which all three offensive linemen missed their block and Cash got the handoff and essentially got just smashed by three defensive linemen. And Tate didn't play, I think, most of the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. They moved some guys around up front. But really, I mean, the lack of physicality, Ole Miss essentially asserting their will up front, then the Ole Miss's ability to get after the quarterback in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter. Georgia's O-line got whooped. So you sit back for Georgia right now, and how do you evaluate this offense? You have a quarterback that's now thrown 12 interceptions. The pick was a tip pick. I thought Carson actually played a decent game. You have a quarterback that still has thrown a ton of interceptions. You have an offensive line that is still shuffling guys around because of injury, that was not physical and could not protect the quarterback. That has not been as good as anticipated this season as a whole. You have a receiving core that has week in and week out really have not shown consistency creating separation. And there's not a group right now that you can say is playing championship football. Let's be honest. There is not a position group for Georgia that is playing championship football on offense. Not one. You have to look yourself in the mirror at some point and just say, we're not it. This is 9 games into the season, and there's not been one good game on offense. Not one consistent good game on offense. There's been some highs, but there's been a lot of lows. Maybe you could say versus Mississippi State, but just going down the list right now, Clemson, you had one half. Kentucky, not a good game. Alabama, one half. Auburn, Mississippi State was probably good. Texas, defense won the game. Offense was horrendous. Florida, one half. Ole Miss, the entire game, no. And they moved the ball in the second half. And I think this goes back to the what I talk about with explosive plays. Georgia was moving the football, but when you can't create explosives, it is very difficult, especially on the road against a great defense, to drive the length of the field and put points on the board. College offenses are going to screw up somewhere along the lines. I mean, I was at South Carolina this weekend talking with their defensive staff. That is what they said. And same thing with Vanderbilt. And why Vanderbilt has kind of had success they've had this year without the mega talent. But what do? They limit explosive plays. They keep everything in front. And they hope the offense screws up. South Carolina with their front can play a lot of cover 2, keep everything in front, and make teams drive the field and hope that they make a mistake or they get a sack or a turnover. Georgia cannot. The lack of explosive plays makes it hard to score points. 6 yards per pass, 1 point whatever per run. That you can't win football games. You can't put points on the board when that happens. So really bad performance by Georgia's offense. Ole Miss's defense, fast, physical. They've been like that all year, though. This is a great defense. This is a defense that has won more games than the offense has won this year for Ole Miss. That's a complete flip of Lane Kiffin. This defense for Ole Miss is winning them football games. And not saying the offense has been bad this year. They haven't. They've been a little bit banged up, receivers. But the defense is legit. So let's go to that side. Defensively for Ole Miss, I thought they played well on all 3 levels. I thought they got after the quarterback. I thought they stopped the run. I thought the defensive backs were super sticky on the back end, not a lot of space. And that's all to be said, really. Like I said, this is a team right now that is winning because of their defense. And not because their offense is playing bad, but because they're playing so well on that side of the football. All right, flipping over to the other side, Ole Miss's offense. We talked about Georgia's lack of creating explosive plays. Ole Miss created explosive plays. Georgia played a lot of too high safety, and they said, "Hey, we can stop the run, or we feel pretty good stopping the run with our front, so we're going to play a little bit more too high." Well, they Ole Miss beat up the middle of the field, like little skinny post routes. They would do things where the number one receiver would kind of get vertical. Then they'd have, essentially a stack route where that second guy would work his way up the middle of the field. A couple times they would work the boundary as well. So when you play cover two, the areas that are open on the field are obviously the middle of the field are open, and then about 18 to 21 yards on the sideline are open. And they hit massive plays with Jackson Dart getting into those areas. They made it easy offensively to all of a sudden they're backed up on their own 1 yard line. Bam, a couple explosive plays down the field. They're in plus territory. Georgia does not have that luxury right now. They can't create explosive plays in the pass game. Ole Miss can create explosive plays in the pass game. Caden Lee, Jordan Watkins, Juice Wells is pretty good. And they didn't even have Trey Harris again. Like, just imagine when this offense, who now you're seeing Watkins making plays and Lee making plays and Juice Wells healthy, you throw Trey in there to the mix as well. This offense is going to be legit. Jackson Dart, I thought, looked good. I thought the offense line had one of their best games of the season. That's the position I talked about that I thought that was going to be the big question, was going to hold Ole Miss back from winning this football game. Offensive line looked good. And that Austin Simmons kid, I remember I had Ole Miss early in the season, and Lane Kiffin said, this kid is special. Special. He's going to be a really good talent in this league. For him to come in there after Jackson Dart went out the first set series and throw just darts, because I watched the beginning of the game before my game happened, and as soon as Jackson went out, Georgia scores. I'm like, fast start. Jackson's out. You got a young quarterback, defense, rainy. Like, this is Georgia's time to pounce. And Austin Simmons came in there and, bootleg, bam. The one little hook route to the slot receiver up and over a defender. I mean, he looked as advertised from what Lane was telling me early on the season. For him to go down the field, put 7 points on the board, and then Ole Miss say, like, okay. Like, Jackson back, Jackson not back, I don't know. But, like, this kid looks like he feels pretty comfortable in the pocket. So that was for them to stay in the game, because I thought that could have been a moment for Georgia to maybe get a quick 3 and out, get the ball back, score again, and then really put Ole Miss like, we're in trouble right now. That was, to me, one of the biggest differences in the game. For your backup quarterback to come in there against that defense, drive the field, and score a touchdown. So quarterback play was really good for Ole Miss. I thought the running backs were okay. Offensive line was better than what was expected. Jackson made some plays with his legs. I thought Georgia's defense was good. It was good. Nice turnover from Dan Jackson to start the game. But later on, the defensive line, their inability to get after the quarterback was a problem. You have one defense that had 5 sacks, in Ole Miss, and then Georgia's defense only had 1 sack. So Jackson had time. Jackson moved well, and that was my hesitation into this game. I said, listen, you could get after Quinn Ewers because he's a statue. You cannot rush a Jackson Dart the same way you rush a Quinn Ewers. I was not anticipating them to have as many sacks and as many pressures as they did versus Texas, even with Ole Miss's offensive line struggles heading into this game. Jackson Dart's too mobile. Lane Kiffin was in his bag. Guys were getting open. He was accurate. So as a whole, we'll sit back and say this. Ole Miss, on both sides of the football, beat Georgia. They beat Georgia. Georgia has not lost a game in 50-plus games to anyone besides Alabama. And this was not fluky. This was not anything crazy happening play-wise. This wasn't a squirrel running on the field. This was just plain old simple. Ole Miss was the more physical team. Ole Miss created more explosive plays, and Ole Miss was the better football team. That's it. As plain as you can say. They won both sides of the football. And for Ole Miss at 8-2 with games against Florida and Mississippi State, feels pretty good that Lane Kiffin's going to the playoffs. While Georgia at 7-2, when they got to face Tennessee next week, and then the pesky Georgia Tech Ramblin' Wreck, who just beat Miami, And a few weeks after, or right around Thanksgiving, right after Thanksgiving, there's no shooing that Georgia Bulldogs are going to be in the playoffs, especially if they play the way they've been playing. Especially if the way they've been playing. This is you should be worried if you're a Georgia fan. And hell, I'm wearing my Georgia gear right now. I'm worried. 100% worried that Georgia is going to drop another one and not make the playoffs. All right. That's it for the show. Appreciate everyone joining in, tuning in, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll have a full recap coming later Sunday night or Monday. Have a great one.